My name is Leland Kent. For the last 5 years, I've been on a quest to uncover the history behind the South's most fascinating and forgotten places. Come with me as we explore a range of destinations from decaying mansions to forsaken mental asylums and beyond. I'm excited to dive into these stories, revealing why they became abandoned, who the last inhabitants were, and what secrets they left behind. Today we're going to explore Little Bethlehem, a forgotten place just outside of Monroe, Georgia. For over 40 years, the compound was home to a mysterious religious community led by Reverend George L. Pike. As rumors swarmed during that time, the locals were convinced that something was going on behind those gates. Was it harmless religious enthusiasts? Was it a cult? Today we're going to take a closer look. In 2012, Little Bethlehem shut their doors and slowly began to crumble. 4 years passed when David Pike, the son of the original founder, purchased the property to begin the lengthy process of rehabilitation. Today, David has agreed to show us around the site and share some of its stories. The chapel at Little Bethlehem was built in 1970 by George Pike and his fellow church members. Pike solely depended on donations and labor from the followers to build the church. It's a patchwork of materials gathered over time.
In the book of Revelation, it speaks of, in the last days, that the throne of God would appear. It was called the Great White Throne of Judgment. So he built the pulpit up here. He preferred to call it the sacred desk. He put the eagles around the base of it. Under the steps in front of it, he put the profile of oxen, the profiles of lions. And I asked him a question one day. I said, so I see this is out of the book of Revelation, where around the throne there were 4 beasts. There were oxen, there were lions, there were eagles, and there were men. And I said, there's no man. He said, well, I'm the man. Dad was born 1929, February 10th. Born in Upson County, raised up in Monroe County, Forsyth, Georgia. His parents were basically farmers. They worked in the cotton mills and in the construction industry. He came up working on a farm out of necessity and didn't get a real good education, just a country farm boy. Became a country music singer, was a great musician, wrote over 1,000 songs, played all the gigs, went to the Grand Ole Opry, did all that kind of stuff. Really just kind of got bad taste in his mouth about kind of the conditioning of humanity and began to pursue the church side. And he had had an experience back as a child in a Southern Baptist, eventually became ordained in the Church of God, and the more he got involved in organized religion, the less he liked it.
Hundreds gathered at a time to listen to Reverend George speak. Little Bethlehem became home for dozens of families from across the United States and beyond.
Well, first of all, he came here in an area that was real thick with KKK, and they would hold rallies across the street. And one of the churches he went and spoke at was a black church. So all the African-American people from up there, it was like 13 families moved here at one time. That didn't sit well with the community.
The local townspeople were not accustomed to Pike's charismatic ministry. His unconventional style and old-school Southern Baptist teachings were polarizing to some, while others revered Pike as a prophet. The church experienced its most substantial growth during the late 1970s and early 1980s. Several churches emptied to join Little Bethlehem after hearing George Pike speak for the very first time.
It's an in season when it's out of season, isn't that right?
It was held out as a cult for a while because it hit its heyday about the time of Jim Jones.
It was then that the rumors began to swirl.
They say that it's a cult. What do you say to these people?
Well, I don't scold them because they don't understand.
We do not live under constraint. We are free.
To outsiders, the followers of Reverend Pike are a little odd. The women wear long dresses, no makeup, and are not supposed to cut their hair. The single women sit separately from the single men in service. And the church itself is decorated like few churches you're likely to see. No sign of a cross. The pulpit is surrounded by stars. Over the door hangs an eagle. And crests of swords are everywhere.
To be honest and sincere, I didn't plan any of it. I didn't program it like that. That's the way it came out.
I've flown over this property so many times and taken pictures out the window of the airplane. And we've got all kind of ideas. This is something that I kind of read into it because there were some things he just kept to himself. And there's a scripture in the Bible that says, out of their bellies shall flow fountains of living waters. And so if you look at this is kind of like a head, and you'll see arms, and you'll see in the middle of it a fountain. Nobody ever said that to me, but flying over the airplane, I would always look at it and go, yeah, Dad, that's another one of them things you just kind of put there that someday everybody's gonna figure out and go, whoa, man, where was this man at?
One of the features that caught the attention of the locals were the soul launchers, concrete pillars that to some resembled launching pads. To launch what was highly speculated. All right, David, here we are at the market and the reserve. This, I guess, is what they would call in the soul launcher.
Yeah, this particular pillar right here, which now my grandchildren, Dad's great-grandchildren, have renamed it Papa's Pillar. But it initially was a pillar that was to support a metal arch that would go up and over to the top of the reserve and fasten to the top of the reserve, so this would be an open air market, and that was a cover for the market. Same thing with the other pillars over here, they were shaped a little different. But because they decided this was not going to work out as planned, they never finished the pillars, or never finished the market rather. So everybody would see these pillars, and obviously they're shaped very unique.
They are.
And so the story began to go outside, which we didn't know here until later on, that we had soul launchers. So when I brought this to Dad's attention, he was like, wouldn't that be amazing if we had that?
Let's go take a look at this reserve. And inside here, this is the vault. And this vault was all hand built, right?
It was actually hand poured, guys mixing concrete. We'll go in, this door is concrete. It's steel on the outside, but it has concrete inside. And if you come in here, it's just a small, compact place. And of course, I've got an old shotgun stored in here.
Still being used as a vault.
Yeah, and I think there's a worn out old rusty pistol that's stuck in there. That's about the size of what we keep in here now. Anything they didn't want to burn down. But it is a vault. Just so you have an idea, these walls are 4 feet thick.
You can hear it.
And they go about 4 feet in the ground, and there's about 3 feet of concrete above us. So it wasn't something somebody could come in here and just, you know.
Yeah, they're gonna break through.
And we used to laugh and say, look, if a really bad storm comes, some of us is gonna live, not many of us, but some of us are gonna be here.
This is probably the most unique house that I've seen here in Georgia. The large house at Little Bethlehem was Don the Father's house, because it was built for George Pike by the church members. The project took place over the course of 10 years and was never fully completed, as funding became an issue.
This is the kicker, Leland. They got it all ready for him to move in.
Yeah.
And he just loved it. He said, I've been thinking about it, which he kind of had this plan from the beginning. He said, I just see no reason to move out of a house that I'm very comfortable in into this big house. So he never spent a single night in this house, never wanted to move into this house. So it became a place for guests. So when ministers would come from other places or guests would come here, he would always invite them into this house, and this would be the place that he would let them stay. So.
Okay. Well, I know one of the other interesting feature about this place that really stands out is this big moat, almost pond we've got. This I can't really think of a good word to describe it. Fountain. But with the bridges, it's so unique, and it really took some effort to make these concrete bridges go across that. And it's really I find it kind of amazing, especially knowing that the guys here are the ones that built all this.
Yeah, and this was built, people would ask him, why are you doing all this? He said, you know, as a boy, he grew up hearing the old cliche that an idle mind is the devil's workshop.
Reverend George L. Pike passed away unexpectedly on June 10th, 1996. He is buried on the property inside a star-shaped mausoleum.
The mausoleum was definitely because of the Star of David. Dad had this reverence for King David from the Old Testament.
David was invited back to make the closing prayer at the last ceremony ever held at Little Bethlehem. Following that day, Little Bethlehem was completely abandoned for many years. After much debate, David Pike made the decision to repurchase the property with a group of original church members and their descendants with the hopes of preserving his father's legacy here at Little Bethlehem.